replicating as close as I can to the original movies, as well as adding my own spin on things. I am going to be attempting a rather pointless task at building one of my favorite places in all of cinema. I'm recreating FLYNN's arcade from the original TRON and TRON Legacy. I'm going to be combining the two to create a ultimate version of FLYNN's arcade in The Sims 3. Hopefully you enjoy this build. I am trying to figure out new ideas for videos to put on my channel, so hopefully you enjoy this crazy project that I have in store. Before we begin, don't forget to visit my websites and click the other links in the description, and yeah, enjoy the video. Alright, let's get started with this build. I start by opening The Sims 3 and picking a city that has a large lot, and I ended up changing that lot type to fit the type of lot that I'm going to be building, which is an arcade. You can see here that I'm kind of fiddling with the display settings a little bit to try and figure out what works best for the time-lapse recorder software that I'm using, but in the end I don't really think I got the proportions right or anything like that. You can see that when I have it full screen it's actually quite dim, and you can really only see it when I have it not full screen. So when I start building, I start by doing a general building shape, and once I have the general building shape of FLYNN's arcade, I start working on the entrance. You can see here that I'm struggling to figure out the sizing of the doors of the doorway, and I'm struggling to find out which door I should use. By the way, for this whole build, I was going off of screen grabs that I had taken from TRON Legacy and from the original TRON in 1980 and from the 80s. Was it 84, 86? I'm not sure. But yeah, I was working off screen grabs for this build, whereas a previous build that I did in the past on one of my previous YouTube channels, that was done entirely from memory. And looking back on it now, I didn't even get close with the build. Here you can see me sort of grappling with the building shape a little bit. In the end, this was really the closest I could get to the building shape of the actual building inside FLYNN's arcade. And right here I enter the testing cheats enabled true and by debug lines of code, the cheats in the Sims console, so that I can access the debug items that you see here. And that sign right there is really the closest I could get to the sign of that from the movie, and that brick pattern was the closest I could find, at least, to the pattern of the original building, like the aesthetics of the original building from the films. Here you can see me going back and kind of tweaking the shape of the entrance a little bit. And after I tweaked the shape to better match the screen grabs that I had, you can see I paused for a second there, that I was looking at my screen grabs. I was looking at the inside of the building. So in the original TRON, the buildings were the original walls inside the building were sort of like a wallpaper, and they weren't necessarily brick. But since the walls inside the arcade in TRON Legacy are brick, I decided that I would do a mix of both movies. Like I would do something like the best of both worlds type thing, you know? After a bit more tweaking, I moved on to looking at reference images more and looking for the right windows to put in the building. I kind of struggled with the height at the ends, In the end, I kind of struggled with the height to put the windows and the positioning of them, but I think I got close enough. You can see earlier I kind of struggled which window to go with. I was trying to find which one matched best. And for these windows in the entrance, I couldn't really decide what window I should use. You can see there my save alarm went off, and it reminds me to save my game every 30 minutes. So yeah, now you can see here that I'm kind of struggling to figure out which windows to use. But in the end, the closest I could get was the windows that you saw at the ones that those ones. Those are the ones I ended up going with, and that was about the closest I could get. So now with the general building shape, I can start working on placing the arcade machines. You can kind of see a jump there in the time lapse and me going through screen grabs right here. And I did this to get a general layout of how the arcade machines were arranged in the movies. I did end up going off of screen grabs from the original TRON as well. And right there you just saw how I get my screen grabs. I just take a screenshot of it. So yeah, I take a screenshot of the movie, and so for this I kind of got lazy, but I also didn't. So you can see me just cloning different arcade machines over and over again, and this was really all I could do to get as close as I could to the look of the original TRON. I did go back later after recording this and fixing the aesthetic a little bit, kind of tweaking each arcade machine a little bit, selecting a different color scheme for the arcade machines, so that there would be a little more diversity in the layouts as well as the colors of the machines. You can see here that I kind of just I had struggled, kind of struggled a bit to find a quick method. And with this, I also decided to add my own little spin on things. I added some arcade tables. And with these arcade tables, and yeah, I also forgot one of the arcade machines from the expansion packs that I downloaded. So yeah, and you can see me going around and tweaking the positioning of these arcade machines. But yeah, I eventually get back to working on the arcade tables, and I kind of work on their positions a little bit. I also added some claw machines and whack-a-moles, or whatever they're called in this game, I forget. The name escapes me at this very moment. And right after I had all the general layout of the arcade machines, I started working on where the rest of the rooms would go. And you can see that this area right here was where I had extra space that was pretty much going to be unused to begin with. A lot of times during this build you'll see me going around like this, just moving my camera around, and that's because I do this kind of thing to visualize in I turn it around in my head to figure out where I should place everything. I end up going back and changing the arcade machines in that small room later on to some skee ball machines, and you'll see what I'm doing. You'll see what I end up doing with those other rooms that I have yet to use in this build so far. So as for the jukebox, I decided that I ultimately ended up not going with the jukebox and instead going with a boombox like this one that I'm about to place, yeah, right there. And so I figured that it would be more reminiscent of the 80s rather than having a vintage boombox machine like you see in most movies. Again, I decided to have my own spin on things for a lot of stuff in this movie. Well, in this build, sorry. So yeah, it's yeah. I also put a photo booth there, and I couldn't decide where to place this skee-ball machine at first. And there goes my second save alarm. So those two rooms right there, those will be turned into bathrooms. And for this, I decided to put my own spin on things as well as go off general knowledge. And so after a while, I started to notice that those walls were no longer needed, and so I went back and tweaked them. You can see I just used blue and pink for the boys and girls room, the men's and women's restrooms. Sorry, and so after that, I started to play around with the floor design for a little bit. After going through my reference images a little more, after going through my screen grabs, I kind of just in the original Tron it was carpets, but in Tron Legacy it was like a concrete tile. So, and I decided to do a mix of both worlds, where in the original Tron it was a single color carpets, and in Tron Legacy it was a blue and yellow tile that was really faded. So I decided to put my own spin on things and figure out what this would look like as a new tile floor. At first, you can see me just kind of placing the simple flooring all the way along these in a checkerboard pattern, because I didn't really like how the smaller checkerboards looked from a distance. In hindsight, I probably should have just stayed with those yellow and blue checkerboards, but it didn't really match my reference colors, the colors of the reference images very well, and I could have just tweaked them. I could have just gone back and tweaked those colors, but I ended up not doing it. I just kind of did my own thing. And that's what I do with every time I build something like this. I just do my own thing. That dumpster, by the way, is a really hard to find item, and I have made my own personal collection in The Sims 3 in my installation of hard to find items. So now I'm working on the bathrooms, and you can see I just did three toilets and 2 urinals for the men's room and 5 toilets for the women's room. I think, I'm not sure. Was it 5? Yeah, it was 5, I think. Anyway, so yeah, I just decorated and furnished the rooms accordingly. Now I'm working on the roof, and this is where another part where I struggled a bit. I was kind of grappling with the design, but I eventually ended up going with this brick pattern, which resembled the roof of the building quite closely. I mean, you can't really see the roof in either of the movies. I just went off my imagination. Anyway, I placed that giant billboard, and now I start working on the penthouse. And this one was a bit tricky, because in all the shots of the penthouse in both films, you kind of get confused on the layout of where the stairs up to the penthouse lead, and the layout of the room as well. But I ended up going with it. I think I ended up getting really close, like as close as I could get. So now I'm working on the lighting of the arcade, and in the original Tron, they were like a clear blue glass. There wasn't any clear blue glass lights for this lodge lights that is in the game, and this is as close as I could get to the original Tron. So here you can see I am adding the skee-ball machines, replacing the arcade machines I had placed before with those skee-ball machines. And after a little while, I noticed that the light lines on the counters in the women's room. Actually, I think you might have seen that earlier. I changed the colors to match the color scheme of the room. You'll see what I end up doing with this room right here, but for now I'll keep that a secret. Here's where I started to kind of figure out where to put the stairs leading up to the penthouse. So I went back to the original TRON and got an image of the stairs, and in the end I didn't really get all that right with the stairs. I ended up mirroring the orientation of the stairs, and you'll see here in a minute. I tried to make the layout of the building as practical as possible. You'll see here in a minute, but yeah, and whenever I build these replicas of buildings in the Sims 3, it's really challenging to figure out the best layout. There goes my the third save alarm, and so yeah, this is yeah, I kind of placed the windows and the blinds in the penthouse, and after a little while I noticed that the windows of the penthouse, there was also corner windows in the film, so I fixed the layout of the stairs and put the door in a different location, and just mirrored the steps that I had before. And after going through my references and going through screen grabs a bit more, I had gotten a general idea of how to lay out the penthouse, which you'll see here in a minute as I'm trying to figure out where all the doors go and where the rest of the windows go. You'll see here in a second. Again, I'm going around and visualizing where everything should go in my head. That's why you see me moving around the camera a lot. And right here, I'm working on the lights for the arcade. I'm working on making it so that the lights appear as if they're actually hanging from the ceiling rather than hanging in midair. I could have just left this detail out and it would have been perfectly fine, but I didn't feel like I didn't really feel like the physics were correct, so I ended up going with these pillars, whatever, and it was really just something I could have left out. For the carpet in the penthouse, I kind of struggled for a bit until I ended up going on this design, which was really the closest I could get to matching the original TRON. And here I kind of fiddle with the layout a little bit, the layout of a room a little, and so finally figure out how to get the corner windows of the penthouse into the design. I figure out how to work it in. Once I have the general coloring of the penthouse down, I start to work on the couches and furniture in the penthouse. At first, I started going with this futuristic couch or whatever it is, or I'm not sure what pack it's from, what expansion pack it's from, but at first I ended up going with this couch, but in the end I actually went with a different couch, as you'll see here in a minute. You can see I'm kind of struggling with the colors a little bit. After I saw that couch, I started to kind of tweak everything. Excuse me. And yeah, I ended up going with these with this couch, which was a bit more practical for this design. I meant to tweak the color earlier, so this is the first tweak that I made. But after looking at the screen grabs a little more later on, I noticed that it was a little too white, so I had to make it tan, and I eventually went with that. I ended up going with that color that you see right there on those couches. So I ended up so one thing I forgot to do at the beginning was put fire alarms in the building, because Lord knows that fires can start way too easily in this game, and you really have to watch out for fires. That's why it's good to have a fire alarm in pretty much every room. I didn't end up placing a kitchen in this penthouse, but I did end up placing a bed. And in the end, I was really just trying to go with the look. Yeah, I don't know what the hell that is. It's probably just a glitch, a weird glitch or something. I'm not sure. But yeah, I tried to get as close as I can to the look of the original penthouse in the original TRON. And I kind of also ended up mixing the layout with mixing the original layout with the layout from TRON Legacy. And in the end, I really got as close as I could. So here I ended up I just tried to decorate the rooms a little bit, and that painting was the closest I could get to the painting that was in the film, in the original TRON. And really, I just tried to get as close as I could, but in the end, I don't really think I got all that close. There goes my fourth save alarm. I think I actually lost count at number 3. Anyway, so this is another little thing I decided to add of my own little twist on things. I decided to add these hollow walls, like holographic wallpapers from The Sims 3 Into the Future on that wall, and ended up putting some movie posters around the arcade. But in the end, I didn't end up putting the movie posters in the arcade. If you've caught on basically to what I've been doing now, if you've been following my speech, my largely unscripted speech and narration of this build, you'll probably know where I'm going with the movie posters. Let me know if you guessed what I was going to do with this room in the comments below. Did you guess it? Yeah, it's a movie theater. So yeah, I ended up taking those movie posters I placed outside and I decorated the penthouse a little more and placed another fire alarm there and there, and placed a giant TV and made the walls and floors red in the theater, and ended up making this floor below the seats wood floors. So you may be wondering, well, do I put in the secret office from TRON Legacy? Well, we'll get to that in due time. So after a while, I ended up going back to the entrance to see if I got everything right, to which I did, and I ended up changing the posters in the arcade area and putting the movie posters into the theater area. You can see I placed more decorations in the penthouse, not important, but yeah, these I ended up noticing that the sign was actually way too high on the building, so I ended up going back and tweaking the placements of the sign so that it would better match the original building. And that sign was the closest I could get to the FLYNN's sign that was on the building in the original arcade, in the original TRON and in TRON Legacy. There's a fly in my room and it's driving me nuts. So yeah, here's where I start to work on the secret basements that was revealed in TRON Legacy. And this was a bit tricky. I ended up playing with the layout quite a lot. And after going back and watching the movie, that specific part in TRON Legacy quite a few times and going through my reference images, I ended up tweaking the layout quite a lot. Sorry, I am so tired. I am really tired while I'm recording this. Anyway, I ended up tweaking the color of that door to make it more red and like the same red as the wall to kind of camouflage it. I struggled with a lot of stuff in this build. If it hasn't already been obvious from the way I've been talking and what I've been saying, I struggled a lot with the layout of this build. So with the secret basement office, I ended up, at first I thought that I could make a skylight, but realizing that I could not delete the actual ground, I ended up just creating an illusion, like a movie set lights. And yeah, there goes my 5th save alarm. I don't know, I lost count. I'll just say there goes another save alarm. And anyway, so how I made this was I basically took square lighting and I made the walls a sort of the color of the light that you see in the secret office in TRON Legacy, and that did well in creating the illusion of the lights in the windows of the office. And here I am trying to decide on a window design. I ended up going with a different window in the end. But after going through my reference images again, I realized that the secret office was in entirely the wrong orientation, and so I go back to tweak that here in a bit after I removed the excess rooms from the building process. And here I struggled to figure out which door to use that would closely match the office to the secret door in TRON Legacy. So yeah, and here's when I fixed the layout of the office. There was a lot of stuff that I was tweaking in this build to try and get everything right. And yes, I know in the films there's not 2 skylights, but I was kind of getting lazy at this point and just decided to leave that extra skylight in. Yeah, that's the window I ended up going with. And that was the closest I could get to the shape of the desk in the secret office in Tron Legacy. And since there's no grid laser in Tron Legacy, I just decided to let my imagination fill the gaps and put in a science station from the Sims 3 University and expansion. I figured you could actually upload your mind into the grid and like stream your mind into the grid, and that's how it would work in this particular building. So yeah, after a little while I noticed that those stairs were missing, and I went back and lit everything. After I had finished the basement, I had done my first scan over of the entire layout of the building. That's what you see with this quick floor changing. We're almost done here. Here I named it FLYNN's. The lot name was at first FLYNN's Arcade, but later on I just changed the name to just FLYNN's. And after that, I started painting in the concrete around the building, and for this spray, I just ended up going with the default texture for the asphalt painting that is in the base game of The Sims 3, and it may look like I'm doing this pretty fast, but it actually took quite a while in real time to get this paint to fill the entire lots. So sorry if my voice is just awful. I actually have a bit of a cold right now, and there's not much I can do about that, unfortunately. If you're wondering why I sound a bit strange, that's why. But I am almost done curbing this cold. And after I had painted in the asphalt, I placed all the parking spaces around FLYNN's Arcade. And yes, I know this is not how the layout. This is not the layout of the parking spaces in the original films, but I decided to go with my imagination. And with that, the arcade is officially done. I did one final scan over, and yeah, with that, FLYNN's is officially built. Hopefully you enjoyed this, and yeah, I'll see you later. Thanks for watching.
Choose your fighter. Lightning inspired. Fight.
Hopefully you enjoyed that video, and hopefully you enjoyed me building and recreating FLYNN's arcade in The Sims 3 and working around the problems that I was facing. Again, please remember to visit the links down in the description to my website and my Ko-fi page and other things. You'll find links to all my different pages on my websites, and you can figure out how to support me and figure out how to get better videos out to you guys by just going to my websites. The link will be down in the description. So yeah, stay bright, stay awesome, and as always, remember, it's cool to be a nerd.